welcome to another episode of Chronicles of War. I'm Alex, and today, well, like I mentioned last episode, this is going to be going into the War of 1812 a little bit. Briefly mentioned parts of it last episode as well, with the second battle of... I don't remember what it was called off the top of my head. Anyway, you should know what it is, though. But anyway, today we're going for another battle during a battle during the War of 1812, the Battle of Baltimore. I definitely had this planned and did not think of it when I recorded last episode at all. Well, I mean, I did have it planned, but I just decided I was going to make it this episode. But anyway, let's get started with the Battle of Baltimore. So, takes place during the War of 1812. Like I've said, like I briefly mentioned last episode, very oversimplified version of the War of 1812. It's because Canada. America tried to take some of Canada. British weren't happy about that. But also the British are also fighting the French right now and Napoleon. So fun times, but not for the British, or honestly, or just anyone really. Who knows? Anyway, like I said, I'm not going into detail on the War of 1812. It's not really something I'm planning on doing, really, because I'm not planning on going in depth to wars for the most part on here, unless it's a very brief one. I know I did those two wars, the Barbary Wars last episode. Yeah, that's what it was, Barbary Wars. I know I did it last episode, but that doesn't exactly count, because I mean, it kind of does. But anyway, right, back on track. I need to stop getting distracted. Battle of Baltimore. So, I'm going to start on September 12th, 1814. I know, shocker. It's the War of 1812, but we're in 1814. What? You have no idea how many times I accidentally wrote 1914 when I was writing my notes for this. But anyway, so the 12th of September, 1814. We're at North Point, which... okay, that's it's near Baltimore. So there's 5,000 British troops there. They're led by Major General Sir Robert Ross, and facing them is about 3,000 members of the Maryland militia, and they're under General John Stricker, who was dispatched by Major General Samuel Smith. Their job is just to delay the British from reaching Baltimore while the army sets up defenses and it gets prepared for the British to come. So that's just their one job. Let's see. Ross is killed in the battle by a sharpshooter. So then Colonel Arthur Brooke ends up taking over the British army here, the British troops here. And then the American troops, the militia, fall back to the main defenses around Baltimore. So then we head to Hampstead Hill. We're at the Rogers Bastion, which is east of Baltimore. It's commanded by Commodore John Rogers, who is also under General Smith, that we mentioned before. And it's the dawn of September 13th we're at now. There's 4,300 British troops advancing. Again, they're under Arthur Brooke. So they establish their headquarters about 2 miles east of this hill, and they're there to attack the city. However, they find an unfortunate problem. The British do, because you see, Baltimore is more defended than they're expecting. There is 10,000 American troops there, as well as a few thousand members of the militia. And with them, they also have 100 cannons. The British end up failing in this attack because, well, they're not exactly expecting to be facing this many troops. So, what ends up happening is the British return to ships on the 14th at 3 a.m. Now, they also make a bit of a decision, and that is they're going to bombard Fort McHenry. Now, that name might be a little bit familiar to you, and it's the reason why I decided to do this battle. Fort McHenry is where the origins of the Star-Spangled Banner took place. That's what this battle is. So, all tangled up in cords. Anyway, so Fort McHenry. So there are only 1,000 soldiers there, and they are under Major General George Armistead. So they're there, they're waiting for this bombardment to begin because, they're right on against the water, so they can see, the British ships out in the water getting ready to attack them. Now, what they did do though was they took a couple merchant ships and sank them at one entrance to the I think it's a harbors there. There's like an entrance to it that was kind of right next to the fort. So they sunk a couple merchant ships there because, if you do that, British can't get in there, which strategic move. So, anyways, they're waiting for this bombardment, and it does begin on the 13th of September. So, before this is actually technically a first. This bombardment happens, before the British return to their ships. Now, there's only 19 ships that are actually attacking them. Now, I know multiple accounts I've heard previously are how there's hundreds of ships or something like that. In reality, it wasn't that many, apparently. Because I've heard lots of misconceptions about this battle. But we'll get onto those a bit later. So these 19 ships attack, and they are bombarding this fort for 25 hours straight. So, and in those 25 hours, the British fire 1,500 to 1,800 cannonballs at the fort. However, most would expect that, firing that many cannonballs would cause a lot of damage to the fort. However, barely any damage had been done because Fort McHenry had recently been fortified. So they didn't really have to. They did not have to. The cannonballs didn't do much damage. So, morning comes September 14th. Over Fort McHenry, a 30-foot by 42-foot American flag is raised. This flag becomes known as the Star-Spangled Banner. Now, onto some of the misconceptions about this battle. So, for starters, with this flag, there's the misconception that it was done to taunt the British. However, raising this flag was actually just standard procedure for them to do of a morning. Just standard procedure. Another misconception is that during this battle, the flagpole that was holding up the American flag over the fort was actually held up by like soldiers and civilians and stuff. However, not really the case because the size of said flagpole made it where you that wouldn't do anything to hold up the flagpole if it were to supposedly fall over or be unable to support itself. But anyway, of course, this battle, this part, gets remade into the Star Spangled Banner, written by Francis Scott Key, who was in the process of, working on the release of a prisoner. While this is going on, he's working on a prisoner release, and he sees the battle going on, just starts writing. Now, I feel like this is important to go over because, like I said previously, there's a lot of misconceptions about this battle with the bombardment of Fort McHenry. Because, like I'd said, I learned stuff while doing research for this because I started researching and I was going off, the stuff that I had originally heard mentioned. However, I'm doing this research and I'm like, where's the mention of this stuff at? So then I specifically looked that stuff up, only to find out that in actuality that information just wasn't accurate. So that's why I feel like why it's important, to make sure, like when you do research on this type of thing, well, even if you're not going to go and do research, it's just important to make sure you have the facts right with this, because otherwise, well, you might end up with some incorrect information, and that can cause you to spread incorrect information, which above all isn't good, especially so with this type of thing. Well, just anything, it's not good to be spreading misinformation. Because research. Because beforehand, I originally heard all this stuff in a video I had watched, that was supposedly about the origins of the Star Spangled Banner. I decided to watch this video because apparently it was really good. And if the events from the video were actually true, then yes, it would have been really good, really good video about it. However, unfortunately, since many of the events were not actually accurate, then which I only discovered researching this. So, if you're ever curious about some historical event, despite hearing rumors about it, always make sure you look into it a little bit before you go and start sharing this information, because, well, I came into this episode, the research for this episode, fully ready to go in purely just about the attack at Fort McHenry. That was what this episode was purely supposed to be about originally. However, instead, I've changed it to just the entirety of the Battle of Baltimore, because, well, like I said, most of the information I was planning on including was in fact false. And also I realized that, even if it was correct information, it wouldn't have been enough for a full episode. So I just decided to, keep it short. No, I did not decide to keep it short. I decided I'd go over the whole battle instead of just one part of it, which, now I'm thinking about it, also actually just makes more sense. That's why go over only one specific part of the battle when I can go over the whole thing. And so, yeah, that's the Battle of Baltimore and the origins of the United States national anthem. It's definitely a bit of a shorter episode, But that's because, like I said, parts of the stuff I wanted to include ended up being false. So, yeah, it's the episode. Just a reminder, going to be mentioning this every episode because, in case someone decides to just watch a random episode first, which, I mean, you can do that, yes. However, because you don't necessarily have to watch all these in order unless it's like part of a mini series, and like last episode was. With those, then yeah, it's probably best to watch them in order, assuming I do more of those, because I don't really know right now if I'm going to do more of those. I'm obviously going to finish that miniseries, but anyway, yeah. So yeah, like I said again, do have a Twitter account. I post updates. I post when after I upload a new episode. Like you'll find out if episodes are delayed and stuff like that. And so yeah, that Twitter is capital C Chronicles, capital OFF 44. It's Chronicles of War, and there's currently no profile picture on it because I still have yet to finish making the logo. I mentioned in last episode that yes, I am working on getting this logo made for it. I again still have no experience using Photoshop. So once I get that all figured out, again, there will be a logo for this, and I'll put it on the previous episodes. Maybe if I can figure out how to do that, and then be on the Twitter. Also, another thing with that, eventually, I'm planning on also cross posting these episodes on YouTube again once I figure out how to do that as well. Because I know I can do it, but again, that's going to require me to have the logo done for sure, since it's just a PNG for the entire episodes. That's the video. I don't know why I did quotation marks. You couldn't see that. Anyway, yeah, I'm definitely not just buying time to lengthen this episode out. But yeah, just again, make sure you follow the Twitter. Because that way you can, message me thoughts on an episode, a battle, or a person, a military figure you want me to go over, and I might do them. Since, yeah. So yeah, just thanks for listening, and make sure you tune in to next episode, and